Hello, it's Dr. Gillian Hughes back with you for the second part of this professional communications module. And today we're going to be looking at oral communications. And we're going to be looking particularly at three parts of this. The forms it takes, the advantages it has, and the limitations. Now, by the end of this, you should be able to understand how oral communication works. You should be able to recognize the advantages it has over other forms of communication, maybe, and also assess the limitations, because there are limitations. So, what do we mean by oral communication? Well, quite simply, it means the transfer of information through speech, doing exactly what I'm doing now. I'm transferring information to you through speech. And it allows the sharing of vital information and complex thoughts. You can say an awful lot in a short time, and you can put over some very, very complex ideas. But you have to be very careful that you don't make it overcomplicated and all the rest of the sorts of things which get involved in oral communication. In verbal communication, for instance, the choice of words shapes how others perceive us. If we use a lot of slang, for instance, or we don't speak very clearly, or we don't finish our words properly, and so on, you could be thought of as being poorly educated and really not very bright. If you use a lot of complex words, you might be perceived as being beyond the reach of most ordinary people. You've got to be rather very, very careful how you use your particular forms of speech. Other things to think about in terms of communication and verbal and oral communication is the non-verbal part of the communication. When we speak, we have facial expressions. You may be smiling, you may be glum, or whatever. We use our hands a lot to express ourselves. A lot of people use their hands an awful lot more than others. We use eye contact, and avoiding eye contact can be seen as a weakness, really, or you're not putting over the story that you want to use. And body language is really quite important. There are huge amounts of studies in the use of body language and how it works. Because if you if you cross your arms in front of your body, you're being defensive, you're trying to keep people away. If you slouch in a chair, you're seen as being sort of lazy and not committed, whereas if you are bright and attentive and so on, that is giving the body language of you being interested in the person you're talking to. There's also something called paraverbal communication. That is the variations in the sound of the language, the tone you use, whether it's higher pitched like that or lower pitched and so on, pace that you speak, whether you speak quickly, or if you want to emphasize something, you speak more slowly. So there's all these sort of things there, which is paraverbal. It's running alongside the communications that you're making. So the forms of oral communication are pretty extensive. It frequently takes place in official settings. It can be a presentation to a group of people, to people, the workforce, and so on. It can be a speech. It can be like this. It can be a lecture. Lectures can go on, I warn you, a long time. And frequently, in these sort of rather set and official settings, you'll use more formal language. Speakers will plan what they want to say well in advance. It won't be made up at the time, and often it'll be scripted, so you're reading from the speech. Now, informal communication is something we do all the time. It's in much more relaxed settings. It's based on social relationships. You're talking to your friends, you're talking to your family. These can include all sorts of casual chats. You meet somebody in a corridor, in the street, on a train, on a bus, all these sort of things. So you strike up a casual conversation. Frequently it'll be started by somebody saying, "Oh, how are you today?" Or "I haven't seen you for a long time." If you live where I do in the UK, we are obsessed here with the weather. And it's a bright, very sunny day today, it's quite warm, and we'll say, "Oh, it's warm for the time of year, isn't it?" Because we don't expect it to be this warm. It's that sort of informal chat. It's the sort of chat you have in a phone conversation, the sort of chat you have with friends, with family. Now, examples of oral communication are pretty easy to think about. It can include face-to-face conversations. It's phone calls, it's speeches, presentations, debates, lectures. It can be a conference where you have a big staged event. These conferences can go on for several days at a time. Teleconferencing, where people get together. It's now called things like Zoom or Teams and so on, which became very commonplace during the COVID pandemic. In-person meetings, people getting around a table together to discuss different things, or interviews, where you give a formal interview to somebody. So there's forms of oral communication. It's got many advantages. It's personal. It lacks this formality and distance of, say, a formal letter or a formal email or a formal communication such as that. It's very, very efficient. You get a lot of information over very, very quickly. And it can be very powerful. You think of many world political leaders who make speeches, and sometimes they are pretty powerful. They stir up a lot of either interest or hatred, and all sorts, because they have impact. Speech or communication has an impact. You're probably, I would guess, more likely to remember some oral communication than you would reading a script. Well, you can read the script back several times, but you can only have the conversation once, unless you're recording it. But you can only have it once. So there's impact in oral communication. It's quick. You get your message over in a few words. Would you like to go out today? No. All done. Question over. You get virtually instant feedback when you're speaking to somebody. Remember, we talked about those facial expressions. You will see on their face if they're interested or if they're not. And it's virtually instant. It's highly flexible. You don't really need to set up a meeting or set up anything to have that conversation. You'll meet somebody by the doorway, in the corridor. You'll get that conversation with them. And you can have a group communication. It's not just one letter written by me to give to somebody else or two or three people. You can all communicate together and put ideas together and chat over different aspects. It's got confidentiality in certain circumstances. And in certain circumstances, it will remain confidential unless that person goes out and says, "I've just been told, guess what?" And they break that confidentiality. And if you're speaking, like I'm speaking to you now, and I have a visual aid here in front of you because you've got a sort of PowerPoint, it's enhancing that visual aid and talking more about it, fleshing out what you see on the screen here. But there are limitations. Obviously, it's pretty difficult, if not impossible, to document speeches unless you have got recording. And these days, having these things around, phones have got ways to record, and you're able to record something quickly. However, you've got to remember that you have to ask the person if they're happy to be recorded. Often oral communication will have poor retention. I'm not quite sure what so-and-so said to me earlier. I met them and I can't remember what they said. You know, so if you have that on a letter or an email or something, remember it. Listeners to a speech or a presentation must be receptive, and they've got to concentrate hard on what's going on. There are possibilities, of course, of veering off and veering off topic and being sidelined, and then you introduce a whole lot of other information which is not what you wanted to discuss, and it can go wrong. It can be time consuming. For instance, if you have to go to a speech, that speech could be put into an email and shared with you, and you can read it in 5 minutes. Whereas a speech, you've got to get up, go to wherever it's happening. It may not be in the same building, or even the same town, or even sometimes the same country. So you've got to go and attend that. And it can be imprecise because of people's limitations with the language they use. So we've had a look at how oral communications work. We've looked at the advantages of oral communications, and we've thought about the limitations of these methods of communication. If you like, there is a reference towards the end telling you what's happening, and that will hopefully be helpful for you. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Hello there, it's Dr. Glynn Hughes back with you again in this professional communications module. Today we're going to be looking at written communications, and in the same way as we looked at the last area of discussion, we're going to be looking at the forms that written communications take, their advantages and their limitations. So hopefully by the end of this all you'll be able to understand the intricacies of written communications, and there are numerous intricacies. You'll realise the advantages, but you'll also understand the limitations that there are to written communication. So, how do we define written communications? Well, almost every job in any business or charity or non-profit, whatever, involves forms of written communication, encompassing any contact using the written word. Just think about any organisation with which you've had contact. You could think about applying for a job there because you will have seen an ad somewhere. Maybe it's online, maybe it's by email, maybe it's in a formal publication printed, but somebody has written that job ad. You apply for the job you're writing. You'll get a letter or email or something to say, will you come along for an interview? If you get the job, you get a formal contract. It's all written. So written communication encompasses any contact using the written word. You also use symbols in written communication. Think about punctuation, for instance, telling you how the communication actually runs, where there are pauses, where there are subplots, if you like, to the whole thing. There are symbols like the @ sign in an email address, and so on and so on. You can involve many thousands or millions of people at any one time in the written world. You think of newspapers, and particularly countries where print newspapers still are very, very prominent. They're not so prominent as they were where I live, but in their heyday, some of the newspapers were selling in tens of millions. But that has migrated online, so you'll still see word, and it can involve millions of people reading anything at any one time. Right down to communication between just two people. If I was to write one of you a personal letter, just to tell you some news about what's going on or whatever, or send you an email, it's to one person. You don't often send a group email unless you need to send a group email. So written communication is also regarded as more formal than oral communication. It's being a little bit more almost important, I suppose. So you get a letter, seems to be, still in my mind, if I get a formal letter, it seems to be more important than an email. And that's more important than a phone call, which is more important than somebody just calling you across the street to say hello. So it has that sort of air of authority, if you like. And a very wide range of written material is used. Just think about the companies that you might be involved with. Your bank, your education establishment, schools you went to, shops that you use, and so on. Written material is paramount to these companies, from advertising, through to brochures, leaflets, personal messages, and so on, to get you to buy their products or to use their services. You can have a personal contract, I mentioned before. Letters will go out from companies telling you about different things. Letters going through the post system in an envelope with a stamp on it, remember that? And right down to reports and proposals. Most big companies are under a legal obligation, for instance, to provide a report about what they're doing each year. Proposals for new products, or proposals for putting a building somewhere or doing something. Public relations documents, right through to electronic communications. Everything that happens within these companies, the written word is there. So it does require quite a lot of skill, really, to be able to make all this happen. So just thinking about these communications, the advantages and limitations, really. The forms of written communication we have big time now electronic communications. Websites are massive. Now, I'm old enough to remember the internet as it was invented, more or less, and before the days of the World Wide Web, when you more or less had to know the website you wanted to go to and then just call it up. But we have this huge repository of websites with information about just about anything you can possibly think. I often call my phone my brain, because if I need to know something, I just Google it or whatever, I find out instantly. So there's all that written. There are emails. There are faxes. Again, faxes are dying out because emails have replaced them, and you can attach documents to emails, and they're actually better quality, really, than faxes. But some places, there are faxes still in use. We still have text messages on phones. There are blogs, there are vlogs, there are instant messages. There's all sorts of electronic communication, which is virtually instantaneous. That message is around the world in seconds. Certainly, what I do here, I'm based in the UK. I'm in contact with people in India, and it's just like we're in the next room. It's that quick to make a call, to send an email, just to send something over. It's incredibly quick. There are formal, established communication, things like formal letters, and then things called memos. Memos used to be very, very big in lots of companies, lots of organizations, and it was just a little short message. It's almost like a text, but it was typed out, telling you that we won't be having the meeting we were supposed to be having at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's been put off until Monday morning or Thursday afternoon or something. I don't know. There are bulletins, there's reports, there's business proposals. There's all sorts of things that come out from companies, talk to their workforce, to talk to their customers, to talk to the people who are involved with them. And in an education establishment, for instance, there's all sorts of communication going to potential students who might like to come and study. There are formal communications that go to people who get an offer to take a place. There's then all the communications over the learning process. There's the communications over examinations and so on, where you write down what you know, and then when you graduate, that's again a formal procedure. Written communication again is very, very important in personnel matters, job contracts, manuals, information telling you how to do the job, the contract telling you what you're going to be doing, when you'll be expected to be at work, how much you're going to be paid, and so on. A very, very important piece of written information. So that gives you an idea of this sheer scope of written communication going on all the time. Think too, when you get out of whatever you're doing and you walk down the streets or go to places, there's advertising, there's billboards, there's leaflets all over the place, there's brochures of different things. So written content within video commercials. So we're surrounded by written information. There's written information on the front of a train, usually telling you where it's going, on the front of a bus, telling you where it's going. There's written information in a bus stop telling you what time a bus is expected to turn up. So there's all sorts of stuff which is around us all the time. And there's public relations, an area which I worked in quite extensively, where we're putting out things like news releases, promotional material, background information, pictures and so on. But we'll come on to that in due course. So it's a great deal happening all the time. There are, of course, limitations. The written system is economical and efficient, but some of the older methods, for example, letters, may not be the best way anymore to send urgent information. Where I live, we have a system of first-class mail, which is supposed to, and usually does, get to the destination the next day, which is fine. But it's still slower than sending an email. Email will be there and back in seconds. So sometimes these older methods are slower and more cumbersome in a way. You need to have accuracy as well. That is essential in written text. So you really need to maintain a record as well. You've got to have accuracy in contracts or in brochures and so on, because if you claim that something can do something and it can't, you can be sued. And if your contract is not right, the person either is not going to work for you or potentially is going to. And you've got a record, often called a paper trail. I'm sure you've heard that, where there's a record of everything that's been done and it's in written form. It can't be in the form of what's in your head, because people forget things and it changes. Personalized communications as well can develop positive and respectful professional relationships. Probably more valued than emails or text messages, because somebody has taken the time to sign the letter themselves.
हेलो उज्जवल कहाँ
So
थे
that
आज
has
पूरा
real
टाइम
personal contact. You don't really get
लाइव
that
एंड होने वाला
on
है
an email.
हेलो
Emails
प्रियांशु
may be very efficient, as I keep saying, but it's that personalized signature which makes for a great deal
डबल टैप करो स्क्रीन पे
of change and makes it more valued. There are, of course, limitations, as always. Getting the right tone to a communication is important. Using the right words, making sure that it's not above the heads of somebody or beyond their comprehension. Creators of written work can also wander off topic, as people who speak can. You have to proofread stuff. You've got to look through it very carefully to make sure words are spelt correctly.
What happened,
You've got
Ujjwal?
the correct meaning, that you're not saying things that are untrue, and so on.
एडमिशन का
And
टाइम है,
written
जॉब
work
क्यों सर्च कर रहे हो?
for people who are not very used to writing can be imprecise. And that's something that you've got to try to avoid. Language can also be overly complex. A lot of people
Shut
tend to
up.
use a lot of
नॉर्मल कॉल पे
jargon
बात करना.
in words which
डबल
mean
टैप
something
करो
to
पहले स्क्रीन पे, लाइक
me,
करो.
but they won't mean anything to you, or you use words that I hopelessly can't understand. The clarity of the overall concept can sometimes be lost when it's one of these very complex ideas. And using too much text. Some people tend to think that if you can write 2 pages of something, that's fine, but then they go on and write 70 pages, and whoa, you absolutely lose the will, really. And as we've said, it's not always the fastest
डबल
way
टैप
to
किए हो
communicate.
स्क्रीन पे?
So there we have it.
ओके, थैंक यू.
That's a quick look at written communications. I hope, therefore, you
सीखो.
understand now the intricacies of this form of written word. There are numerous advantages which we have discussed, but there's also limitations. Have a think about it yourselves and think about the written communications that you see on a regular basis.
ए भाई,
If you want to
क्लास
read
एक
further,
क्लास दो पे होगा,
references
2-3
further down
बारी,
this
क्योंकि
piece of
इसका
text,
एक्सेंट जल्दी समझ में लोड ही नहीं ले रहा है.
information.
क्या ही एक बार में कोई सीखेगा?
Subject, remember. And I hope
समझेगा.
that was helpful to you, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next part of this module. Thanks for
Okay.
watching.
ये सेकेंड थर्ड मॉड्यूल है. ओके, उसका एंड हो गया. फिर मैं परसों नहीं आई थी, कल भी नहीं आई थी लाइव. फिर मिलते हैं कल. अब से डेली आऊँगी. बीच में स्किप कर दिया था. ये भी कुछ कुछ हाइलाइट्स पॉइंट है, देख लो. हाँ, आज नहीं डाला है. आज बस चाय का डाला है. कुछ ना कुछ पोस्ट तो कर ही देती हूँ. आज ऐसे ही नहीं डाल पाई. कल डालूंगी पक्का. हाँ, बन सक ऐसे ही मन ठीक नहीं था, इसलिए नहीं बनाई. आज सुबह से किया ही नहीं. कोई भी शूट नहीं किया, वीडियो नहीं बनाया, इसलिए क्या ही करती. लाइव ख़त्म होने पे सब ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं. वाओ, गुड. कभी कभी खुद से भी देख लिया करो आप लोग, क्योंकि यही टाइम है लाइव आने का. 5-10 मिनट आगे पीछे हो जाता है. इसके कुछ कुछ हाइलाइट्स पॉइंट है. यस, कुछ कुछ शॉर्ट्स, उज्जवल, सारे नहीं. ये क्विज़ है. जितने लोग भी इसमें लाइव हैं अभी, वो लोग इसका आंसर बताइए. एक तो पहला ये वाला हो गया, इसका आंसर क्या होगा कमेंट में बताइए. और सेकंड वाला ये है, इसका भी, दोनों का आंसर बताइए आप लोग कमेंट बॉक्स में। ओके, ओके उज्जवल। जिन्होंने चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है, चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर लें, ये क्विज़ देख लें और कमेंट में बताएं इसका राइट आंसर क्या है। मॉड्यूल 3 का है, कल फिर देखते हैं। जिन्होंने लाइक नहीं किया है डबल टैप कर लें, लाइक कर दें। ओके फिर टाटा बाय बाय। और जिन्होंने चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है, चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, लाइक करें, शेयर करें। और इंस्टा आईडी है ब्लॉग विद सुरभि, उसको भी फॉलो करें। ओके, आपने क्लियर कर लिया है तो फिर इसका क्विज़ का आंसर बता दीजिए कमेंट बॉक्स में। थैंक यू। डी आंसर होगा, नहीं हुआ तो हाँ हाँ हाँ, नहीं है उज्जवल। कोई बात नहीं, आप लोग थोड़ा टाइम ले लीजिए, फिर देखिए उसका आंसर फिर कीजिए। थैंक यू, टाटा बाय बाय, गुड नाइट, शुभ रात्रि।